Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the important topic of building electrification. My name is Rob Lumbach. I direct community engagement for our NIEHS-funded center at the Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences Institute at Rutgers Bush Campus in Piscataway, New Jersey. Today's program is part of our sixth annual New Jersey Environmental Health and Justice Summit. Each year, we bring together community members and organizations, policymakers and academics to discuss complex environmental health issues from their different diverse perspectives. This year's summit topic is the indoor environment and health and justice. Following a conference at Rutgers in October, we have a series of webinars lined up to dive into various aspects of this multifaceted topic. Starting today, we're starting big with building electrification, looking at how we can tackle this complex systems change that is so important to clean energy and climate goals, and also promises direct benefits for health and equity. Building electrification refers to the transition from direct fossil fuel use, like natural gas for heating and cooking, to electricity-powered alternatives like heat pumps and induction stoves in residential and commercial buildings. This transition is crucial for improving public health, mitigating climate change, and promoting equity. Over the next hour, we'll explore experts' perspectives on the mechanisms, benefits, and policy pathways for urgently transitioning buildings to clean electric power. I look forward to a thought-provoking discussion on the critical benefits of electrification and how it delivers for health, climate, and equity. With that, I'll turn it over to Kerry Butch, our Community Engagement Coordinator, to introduce the speakers and moderate the panel. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's been a while since we did a webinar, so I'm excited today. On our panel is the esteemed Elise Pivnik. She's a senior advisor at ISLES. We also have Halima Shabazz. She does special projects for the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. And we also have our very own Memo Laurent. He's an assistant professor at Rutgers, and he is a researcher at EOC. Welcome, our panelists. Each panelist will be given 12 minutes to kind of present, or up to 12 minutes to present, after which we will take comments from the chat. Rob and I will be looking at either your comments or your questions to the panelists, and we'll continue our conversation. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce first Elise Pivnik.
Let's see, share my screen. All right, let's see. So Elise Pivnik here from ISLES. I need to get this out of the way. So I'm from an organization we're a community development and environmental organization based in Trenton. We work statewide and nationally on issues of healthy homes. Our mission is to foster self-reliant families and healthy, sustainable communities, and we like to share what we learn with others who can make a difference. Oops. Why am I not advancing? Let me see. Okay. Here's some of our experience in healthy homes. We did an environmental health profile of Trenton back in 2000, which got us started. We've tested over 4,000 homes for hazardous lead. 2,000 homes for lead and water. We've created a nationally recognized home repair service that combines lead, energy efficiency, healthy homes retrofits. Nearly 600 houses have been completed, 700 energy improvements. We've trained 4,400 individuals at our job training center from many different levels in the healthy home world. So this is other experience we have. We have an electric vehicle program called Go Trenton. We have community gardens throughout the city. We've done brownfield cleanups. We work with community health workers, peer educators, provide technical assistance to DCA grantees, and we are a policy champion. So why add building electrification for a healthy home? Well, the main reasons are you want to protect health, improve the environment, and save the consumer money. So Isles is a founding member of a group called the New Jersey Clean Buildings Council. We're starting a campaign, and our values are: we want to decarbonize homes and buildings in New Jersey, committed to environmental justice, build public awareness, advocate for policy change around all these topics. Here you have a picture of a water heater that's powered by electricity, and we'll be talking more about that as we go through this. So climate change and human health are linked to fossil fuel use in our energy systems. This is in our residential buildings and in our commercial buildings. Indoor and outdoor pollution from combustion contributes to poor health outcomes, including respiratory and cardiovascular disease. So we're really protecting health. We're very concerned about how these gas-fired devices emit toxic air pollutants that directly harm our health. Children living in homes with gas stoves have a 42% higher risk of developing asthma. Gas stove use is attributed to 12.7% of childhood asthma cases nationwide. Gas stoves also emit benzene, a cancer-causing chemical, at levels higher than secondhand smoke. Even when your stove is turned off, that pilot flame is leaking benzene into the air. So when vented out, so we want to improve the environment. So when vented outdoors, fossil fuel equipment can contribute to ozone pollution or smog. In Maryland, they did a study where fossil fuel devices and water heaters emit 3 times more health-harming nitrogen oxides than all the state's power plants combined. So we get burning fossil fuels like methane, which is considered a quote natural gas, which was brilliant marketing way back, and fuel oil directly into New Jersey's homes, responsible for 28% of New Jersey's greenhouse emissions. So think about that. What's going on inside our homes is responsible for our total 28% of our greenhouse emissions. It's not just factories and cars. So the byproducts of combustion: nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, you can read here. 73% of New Jersey households rely on natural gas as their primary heating fuel, and about 9% use propane and fuel oil. So low-income households are especially vulnerable to pollution from buildings. They have a smaller unit size, so gas pollution into the air is not diluted in a larger space. There's more people per home to absorb that and be affected by the pollution. Older homes typically do not have the same ventilation as newer ones, especially if they're in disrepair. Many people we know in low-income communities depend on their stove or oven for supplemental heat, and that causes new pollutants into the air, or extra pollutants in the air. High exposure to outdoor pollution and a greater asthma burden. So the solutions are to upgrade our homes with clean energy devices. Here's what an electric heat pump looks like. Here's one on the outside. The second photo is one on top of that framed piece. It's on the inside. This is what a gas induction stove looks like, and they're very easy to clean. So the consumer will save money. The typical drafty gas heated home can save anywhere from 47 to 69% each year, depending on service territory. And that combines with what kind of insulation you have, what kind of weatherization has been done, but it will save money. And the reason why, and this is important, electric costs less than gas to heat homes. And that's because the units are more efficient. It may take more, the same amount of heat is provided by, so a fossil fuel furnace uses 30 units of energy to heat a room. But an electric heat pump uses only 10 units of energy because it's 300% more efficient. So at very cold temps in New Jersey, it will use about 15 units of energy, half as much as a fossil fuel unit. So that's why these units cost less to operate, even if electricity costs more than gas. So pretty soon we're going to have the benefits of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is supposed to change how Americans live. It will be promoting savings for heat for consumers. There'll be rebate. There's already some rebates and tax credits available. for these devices and available soon. There'll be 2 rebate programs targeting low and moderate income people. They're called Homes and HERA, and they're meant to lower monthly energy costs for low income Americans. A key thing is we want to integrate these IRA funds with other housing programs. They should be integrated with, if you're already eligible for food stamps, you shouldn't have to fill out a whole new application. If your household's already getting energy rebates, we should be able to combine with weatherization, home rebates, and building electrification. So how do we just streamline the programs so they'll be used most efficiently? So we're talking about bureaucratic efficiency as well as energy efficiency. So the New Jersey Master Plan says by 2050, 90% of building space and water heating should become electric by 2050 again. How are we going to get there? So there is, we're going to need legislation, possibly some indoor air quality standards, and we need to increase demand. So we may need to adopt legislation that encourages electrification of buildings in the state, maybe by reducing or preventing future gas connections. There's a Chris Smith bill that's about to be reposted that is about these, how New Jersey will promote electrification. There are a lot of people that have different views about this. The first bill was pulled because there was not consensus even among the advocates. And there's also an electric grid bill, which will prepare our grid for the more demand of electricity that we expect from electrification. We need to adopt some indoor air quality guidelines to inform our health protective strategies. Right now, there aren't any, so we really don't know if you've got a healthy home or not. We need some baseline standards to help us. And we need the incentives to increase demand in the marketplace. And there was just a New Jersey bill that was, I think, posted yesterday that is going to offering some New Jersey incentives, proposes to offer some New Jersey incentives as well as the federal incentives from IRA. And we need education to increase the demand. We know that the fossil fuel merchants have invested about $1 million to convince you that gas is best and cheapest, and it's not. So this is some goals from the Rocky Mountain Institute that we've been working with as part of our statewide group. We want to raise public awareness of health and climate costs of fossil fuels in buildings. We have a press event that's scheduled on March 11th that will go along with some votes we expect on some key bills on electrification. And we want to see education in all communities, and that will be an ongoing effort because there's a lot of resistance to new technologies. We see that from simply trying to install solar panels in houses. There's a really big lift here to educate communities so they start asking for these devices. We need to design and advocate electric building policies, especially in 20 key states that represent 70% of direct gas use. We need to retrofit large numbers of existing buildings and create building industry platforms to support dissemination of technology, supply chain development, and business-led interventions. And if this seems impossible, did you know that all of our streets were once lit with gas-fueled lights at night, which was smelly, dirty, generated excessive heat, and was filled with, and was a fire hazard? There was great resistance, however, to electric streetlights. It's the same situation today, the same resistance today for converting to electric stoves and heat pumps. The gas industry is well established. They're very profitable as is. Their industries are built on the industry is built on the gas, the lamp makers, at that time, the pipes. It was a huge conceptual leap to make the change. And right now you're seeing, draft legislation against electrification in many places throughout the country. There's a push to do it here. And think about this phrase, electric David, gas Goliath, but it's not impossible.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Thank you so much, Elise. We're now gonna move on to Halima.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Elise. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So my name is Halima Shabazz. I am from the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. We work with communities, low-income communities, underserved, overburdened communities, to foster in change from fossil fuel emissions to a greener, cleaner environment, and making sure that we are eliminating environmental injustices. So again, thank you, Elise. That was a great introduction to building electrification. So I'm coming from the environmental justice perspective. Building electrification is definitely, something that's wonderful and can be very beneficial to low-income communities and communities of color, communities that have been, historically overlooked. And this is through the just transition. So the just transition, tries to ensure that communities are involved in the decision making of actions like building electrification. So, the framework is around assessing community needs, making sure that the community is involved, establishing community-led decisions, and the decision-making process, developing metrics and plans for tracking what's going on, ensuring there is funding and program leverage. So working with the NJEJ, I've noticed, a lot of these wonderful programs are having issues with the funding. A lot of the programs are having issues with the community knowing and understand what is available and what is out there. Especially with the transition to electrification, some of the green jobs that are on the market, some of the certification programs that are on the market are not, they don't really have access to them. For example, the Department of Justice has just certified the certification program is the energy auditor programs from various organizations, like the ASHRAE certification. And these are jobs that people will need for the transition. Another transition is to offshore wind energy. Currently, New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, we are hosting a offshore wind training program for overburdened community members. We've recently just graduated 20 people through the program, and now they have the ability to provide a sustaining, job, family sustaining job for their families. So, with building electrification, we have to also look on the side of how is it benefiting our community in ways of bringing in funding and also for family sustaining jobs, but also for the information of how the transition is going to benefit them. A lot of people don't understand how, their oven, it's a heat source, but it's also a source of asthma. It's also a source of cancer. Some people don't understand that when their oven is on too long, it may give them a headache. They may think it comes from working all day. And it's actually, from having their oven running. Elise pointed out that with the pilot light being lit, that's actually causing a chemical, drip. That's something that I just found out. So it's about having the access to the information in multiple sources. I would like to link the US DOE certification in the chat at some point, and a link for our offshore wind program. But I would just like to say thank you. Carrie, does anybody have any questions?
We're probably going to do questions all at the end. So if you have time to wrap up right now, you have a couple more minutes if you want to take them. If not, we'll just go right over to memo.
Okay.
go right over to memo?
Yep.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
And thanks, Halima and Elise, for setting up, I think, a very important conversation. I think the efforts of both of you are critical. Something that I think we don't realize, and this is something that a phrase that we start all our academic papers with, is that we spend 90% of our time indoors, right? So we all know it, but we hardly think about it. And when it comes to our residential space, where we have agency of doing things, that's about 2/3 of that time. So if you even think more carefully, probably the space where you spend, the single space where you spend most of your time, of your life, is your bedroom, right? So these places could make us very vulnerable, but could also make us thrive. And I think that's exactly what we are looking at here, at an opportunity to reimagine our built environment, to reimagine our residential spaces in a way that not only can provide us comfort, but can provide us health, can lead us to a better, productive, and healthier life. So I say this because sometimes we hear about, for example, heat pumps. And two important things come to my mind. The first one is people think it's mostly about being comfortable, right? To keep our places warm or cool. And it goes beyond comfort. So as we have experienced, many of us, summers are getting hotter. The number of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit are expected to triple in the next decade, right? So those are things that we have to consider, that is not only about comfort. The very young and the very old are especially susceptible to health outcomes. Some of them very grave, right? So thermal decompensation that could lead to kidney disease, that could end up in some chronic problem or even death, right? So it's not about comfort. And the main issue that we have, and I really liked how Elise incorporated in her presentation, is that money plays a role, right? So to provide cooling, to provide heating, people spend a sizable amount of their monthly budgets, right? So it is very well demonstrated how lower income households have to delay the use of heating and air conditioning by up to 8 degrees with in comparison to more wealthy households, right? So they are taking the burden of these outdoor temperatures in a more severe way. The idea that is being presented by all these legislations, and more importantly, what I think is the technical advancement on the technology, is to really bypass that, to go beyond this paradox that is you either have comfort or you save energy. And I think this is now luckily the case, that we can actually achieve both objectives. So when I was initially invited to this panel, we had a discussion, especially Elise and I brought my personal perspective on the use of heat pumps. So before joining Rutgers about a year and a half ago, I was living in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was very lucky to live in a house that was a very high performance home. It was all electrified. It had solar panels, and the heating and cooling were provided by heat pumps. This was a home that was basically a new home. It was constructed in 2015, and it had the heat pumps, the latest generation of heat pumps at that time. And I mentioned to Elise that I was in love with that place. I really, really loved that house. But I did have to recognize the limitation of heat pumps at temperatures below 20 Fahrenheit. So she listened to me, and she's very well connected. So very generously, she reached out to other colleagues that reached out to me and said, you are basically suffering from the same biased perspective as many other million Americans, that heat pumps do not perform in cold weather. And with hard facts, not with anecdotes, they told me of a series of studies that have done very recently where they prove that at much lower temperatures, heat pumps are delivering most of the efficiency that by design they are intended to. So think about that. Just in from 2015 to now, in the last 9 years, there has been a really noticeable shift in the performance of these things. So I think there's enough information right now that adopters do not have to be trailblazers. The technology is quite mature. Actually, Elise just touched on it briefly, but the intervention in homes, the electrification, is not only adding the heat pumps. It's an integral approach to how a building, how a home works. And one very important element is weatherization. So first, we want to make the building envelope as tight as possible, because that reduces the heat loss through walls, through the roof and windows. Then you add the heat pumps, right? So you have the two things. You have an energy efficient home in the envelope, and an energy efficient home in the systems. What completes the trifecta is this energy recovery ventilation system. So people don't talk much about them, but they are very, very important, because basically once you have sealed your house very well, it's airtight. And even if you were to, let's say, substitute your gas stove with an induction stove, our human activities generate a lot of stuff, a lot of chemicals, a lot of contaminants that stay in the air. If the place is tighter than before, then those concentrations are going to be higher, right? So this energy recovery ventilation system, what it does is provides mechanical ventilation, filtered outdoor air 100% of the time. Not only that, what the systems are designed to grab some of the heat that has been already used in the air before throwing it outside. It grabs that latent heat and introduces it to the fresh outdoor air. So what I'm trying to say here is that you have the benefits in comfort, you have potentially the benefits in lowering your energy bill, and then you have the benefits of reducing the air pollution in your homes that is potentially associated with this fossil fuel consumption or not. Our personal care products, the use of pesticides, many other activities generate this pollution. But if we have that final piece, the energy recovery ventilation system, we can actually attain benefits in all fronts, right? So I think it's very exciting for us, at least in the public health realm, to understand what are going to be the benefits of all of these. The benefits that happen not only to the people inside those four walls, but the societal benefits once we can achieve, just as Elise was pointing out, reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and other co-pollutants in the order of 28% that are associated to fossil fuel consumption in homes just in New Jersey, right? So I think there's, from our perspective, from my perspective as a researcher, is very exciting, because we're actually shifting our perspective of how to do research, looking at a bad agent, a pollutant, and the negative health outcome, to a framework where we look at an intervention and see what are the actual health benefits, not the health negative consequences of doing changes to our environment in a way like this. So, Carrie, with that, I think I finished. I would love to hear questions from the audience. I think that's going to be the most important.
All right, I have one question that's already in the chat, but we want to encourage everybody to put their questions in the chat. It's basically from Ivan Way, and I know Ivan very well, so hi, Ivan. He's a young leader, and he's a very important guy in this field. So anyway, so for homes that have had very low wattages in their apartments, how can upgrades to the unit be helped? For example, our apartment only has 35 amps, 20 for the kitchen and 15 for the rest of the apartment. We used to not be able to use our air conditioner with our microwave in the summertime. So to warm up food in the summer, we had to turn off the air conditioner or we'd blow a fuse. And we don't want to pay for the electricity upgrade. And landlords should do that, but not tenants. So it's an issue, I guess. It's like an environmental justice issue, right? So anybody can answer that question. Who would like to attempt it first? You want me to call on somebody? How about Memo Start?
I think Elise
Oh, Elise,
wanted
you
to
want to
say
do it?
something, but
Okay,
yeah,
I
I'll
just
follow up.
unmuted. Well, indeed, it's a landlord issue, and it's probably a code issue. You know, has the electric panel been sized properly for what's the devices that are in there? And you know, we're not talking about a scientific innovation here. We're talking about a justice issue that a tenant should have. All major systems should be working in a unit that's rented to a New Jersey resident. I wish I had a, you know, I don't have a scientific change here.
Okay. Any other remarks or in reference to that statement or that question?
Well, I think
Well,
there's a broader question there about, you know, the requirements for like heat pumps, for example, which I think are generally, I have one, it's older though, maybe about 2011, requires like 220 amp electricity. So there is some household infrastructure that's required to convert from fossil fuels to electric heat pumps. So I'm wondering maybe Memo, you could comment on that.
yeah, I think something that happens in the built environment and that is really, you know, not conducive to fast changes is precisely this, right? So you have a variety of systems, a wide set of difference in relationship to a building vintage that make plug and play solutions almost impossible, right? So I think that's something that we have to recognize. And where I see a lot of opportunity, and I think programs from like the Inflation Reduction Act and other EPA grants are looking at capacity building, right? So to train people, electricians and the tradesmen, to being able to solve this in the holistically, right? So unfortunately, I think it goes down to the former answer by Elise. It has to be code compliant, right? So there are no workarounds if to this. If the panels, the electrical panels have to be changed, then that's gonna have to be an additional expense. There's not much that it can be done, but there's also support in many cases to do that. I know that, for example, for the electric cars, there's a support for the installation and the electrical work that has to be done to accommodate for the chargers.
So I can also add here, I know that there is some subsidy that's available in the IRA programs to upgrade panels when you electrify. And, you know, it's not a huge amount. It's not 100%, but it is something. And, you know, and it recognizes the need for more electricity inside the house. You know, there's an I referred to the electric grid update bill. There's recognition that our whole energy system is going to need more electrical power starting, you know, looking at our whole electric grid for New Jersey. So people are thinking about this, and at one level, it's good that we're not all electrifying tomorrow because probably the system couldn't handle it. But over time, we're hopeful, and it looks like signals say we're heading in that direction, is to upgrade in time to handle this transition.
Okay, so also in the chat, we have a shout out for, I think it's Memo, because I think it happened during your talk, but Janice Relaford Afolo, who works for the Clinton Hill, she's the senior program manager for the Housing and Environmental Justice for the Clinton Hill Community Action. She's looking to put you on a panel. So I'm asking if we could get I'll send everybody out people's contact information so we can at least send emails and that kind of thing. But I'll shoot over your email, Janice, to Memo. So in addition, I think Rob and I can ask a couple questions also to keep the conversation going. We'd still like to hear from people that are watching if they have any questions or concerns. My question is for Elise, and Elise, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what this coalition is about, and can people get involved in that coalition and those kind of things? Educate us a little bit on that.
So the short answer is yes. You know, you're free to email me. I think it's at the end of my PowerPoint, and you'll I'm sure send that out. Right now, I know that the coalition is working on these bills, the legislation that can start to really change the context, the baseline for electrification. And they're going to have a press event on, I believe it's March 11th we're talking about, that will be parallel to these bills being considered. And, you know, what we're thinking about now is trying to get in a broad way, you know, do a public event that says this is what we stand for, and use that as a way to educate, to begin education of the public. And I know that it's a very long-term process. I've been working in lead for many, many, many years, and you know, believe it or not, there are still people who do not know about lead poisoning, which, you know, typically surprises me because I feel like that's, you know, what all we talk about. But it's you know, it's an ongoing process. So that is where we are right now, making public our values, or making our values public to a broader base, and to start educating legislators, advocates, consumers on these topics, which will include program information about the IRA opportunities and the like.
Okay, excellent. Are you can I do one quick follow-up question? Who's our champion legislators right now on a statewide level?
Well, I know Chris Smith has been the sponsor of a big bill, and he's been absorbing the objections and ideas from all directions.
Okay. All right. So, Rob, do you have any questions for the panelists? I want to give you an opportunity. It looks like Halima just put in the chat. The U.S. Department of Energy recognized home energy auditor qualified certification programs for the energy efficient home improvement credit. So anybody who has wants any more information about the certification programs, take a look at that. Rob, do you have any questions?
I thought maybe we could touch on, again, a little bit more of like the broader issues related to electrification. So I've heard that one of the issues, certainly in terms of the benefits of electrification, is, in doing away with fossil fuels and natural gas, we're not going to have to maintain this natural gas system, which I know in my neighborhood, all the gas lines were dug up a few years ago to be replaced. And I understand that that's a big, billion-dollar issue around the country, certainly, and here in New Jersey, I think as well. That sort of the sunk cost idea that if we, which is necessary, to modernize the aging the natural gas delivery system, and that also contributes to gas leaks and methane and climate change. So I'm wondering how that can be an issue also to put in play, about the political question of how we get motivated to electrify.
Anyone else I don't want to talk too much. Does anyone else want to take that first?
Well, I wanted to briefly mention something that I know has happened in Massachusetts. So instead of actually taking away the infrastructure, they have tried a couple of. I think it's now successful at least as a proof of concept scale to use those gas pipes as the first step to do ground source geothermal, right? So you wouldn't need to remove them, but actually use them. And what it's more interesting about this is that it wasn't like just a wacky engineering idea. It was an organization that very much like Elise has a push for the electrification of buildings and did this in coalition with a local gas utility company, right? So they are recognizing that this is going to be probably an expense that they will have to cover. And instead of, battling against it, they are seeing alternative ways of solving the issue.
It might be helpful, Memo, if you explain what ground source geothermal is.
Sure. So the heat pumps that we have been talking mostly about are using the temperature in outdoor air as the source of heat. So imagine that even in the coldest of the winter days, if you have something that is colder than that, you can transfer heat from the higher heating source to that cooling medium. So you use that energy in the outdoor air as the source of energy. Ground source heat pumps do the same, but down in the earth. So if you drill like sufficiently deep, temperature is very constant, right? And you can either use that as a reservoir of a heat for the winter months or of coolness in the summer months, right? So it's just where you take that, let's say, free energy from, right? You move it from another place, either air or ground. The ground source heat pumps are obviously more expensive because you have to make the drilling, and it's more of a thing that depending on the geological and actual site constraints, it's not fit for every single project. It is much easier to install the air source heat pumps. So if you have already some infrastructure buried, that is what they are utilizing, right? So they have already laid out some of those pipes and they are using that. I'm gonna include a link to that in the chat.
All right, we have
I
a
have one
bunch.
thing.
Okay, go ahead. We have a bunch more questions in the chat, but go
Okay,
ahead.
I'll just add that in some jurisdictions, you're seeing an effort to prevent gas hookups in new construction. So the existing infrastructure would stay, but in new buildings, I think New York City has a bill. I think Berkeley, California also has one. I believe the courts may have said they can't they can't prevent gas hookups unilaterally. There's a big fight here between fossil fuel merchants and, it's become very partisan. And anyway, so that's one way to have things go gradually and not throw out all the infrastructure immediately.
Okay, we have a couple interesting questions, more than a couple, in the chat. One is, are there any health risks to using electricity in the home? Are there any health risks? Any,
I would say there might be if as we were talking, if the infrastructure, the existing electric installation is not in good shape, yeah, there's that risk. I would say that most likely it's a sizable reduction of the risks that are associated to any gas technologies.
anybody else want to take that one? Okay, we'll go on to, are there guidelines for how many amps wait a minute, a chain should aim for? Is upgrade to 100 enough, 200, or should it be 200? Are there guidelines for how many amps a chain should aim for? What do you guys think?
Well, I think that there are people that are trained in this. That
Okay,
if you are going for this, you get the right professional who knows how to size a unit for your space, et cetera. That's a very general way. Memo, maybe you have something more specific.
No, it's just the same. So we have, you've seen it with air conditionings. You have like from the window-sized ones to the 5-ton units. So it's difficult to actually get an answer of that.
okay, we have a very specific question related to radon. So are you aware of any studies that looked at a potential link between ground source heat pumps on indoor level of radon? Even a small extra flux of gas radon from underground pipes combined with high air tightness of homes may significantly increase indoor levels of radon. Radon is a type A human carcinogen. Now, we also have an answer from Derek on that very question. And he says, Derek Schendel, who also works for Rutgers, interesting question, Oleg. I have done radon in homes and schools research. I am not familiar with study about heat pumps installed at the ground level. And he basically says, memo. Answer that. He wants you to take that if you can.
I'll assume that's me. I don't know of any studies looking specifically at this, but the thing that I would say it's unlikely to pose a risk. So what happens is there's just a heat exchange process, right? So you're not bringing air or anything from like underground to inside the house. These are like again a working medium that is being transferred to the heat pump from the set of pipes in the underground array. So I don't think that this should be something to worry about. If any, I would say that if there was a leak, the system will just malfunction because the heat transfer would be hindered. So I probably could take a look at this, but I'm not sure that this should be an issue. With the radon and tightness, that might be another issue. So not like separating it from the heat pump or ground heat pump, that should be an issue. And that's why I said the thing that rounds up very nicely these interventions is the energy recovery ventilation system, right? Because this has proven to have like approximately 2 air changes per hour of fresh air in homes compared to an average of 0.5 air changes per hour. So to explain a little bit more what I mean with air changes per hour is the time that it takes to replenish the full volume of air in an indoor space, right? So in 1 hour, in a normal home, just half of the volume of air is exchanged with fresh air. And what I'm saying is these energy recovery and heat recovery ventilation systems approximately give you double or even 4 times more fresh air than just natural ventilation, not like regular infiltration in homes.
Okay, we also have an answer for you from, I think it's Father Miguel. There are always risks with the use of electricity, but they are very small. Remember that electricity produces electromagnetic fields. We are all surrounded by electromagnetic fields. So there's a big picture question that Betsy asked, and I want to ask it for you now because this is kind of a big picture question. How can the goals for energy efficiency be coordinated with expanding high quality affordable housing? It's like a huge question. It's a big picture question, but we might want to end on a big picture question. How can the goals for energy efficiency be coordinated with expanding high quality affordable housing?
I'll start. Well, that is the question dear to my heart. And I think, advocates are looking for ways to bring this technology to multifamily buildings. And we're looking ahead to, can we get, HFMA money, subsidy money to subsidize pilot projects in our publicly funded or partially funded buildings. And geothermal for a group of apartment buildings is more realistic than trying to do geothermal for a few houses at a time, et cetera. And well, anyway, the whole major system idea is very important for the future of multifamily housing and affordable housing, in my view.
Anybody else want to comment on that big picture question? And then it's getting close to noon. I want to just share the next panel. So anybody else want to take that big picture question?
So I'll just mention that I'm more familiar with the situation in Massachusetts, and there have been already very significant large multifamily affordable housing projects that incorporate a passive house standard. So this is basically the most energy efficient standard that is popularly known, very tight homes. And something that similar to what we talked about, the myths around heat pumps, is also the myths about energy efficient buildings that are incredibly more expensive. And the reality is that in many cases they are not. The return of investment is very attractive, especially for this type of constructions, multifamily buildings, where maybe there's some centralized entity that has to cover the operational expenses, utilities. So their investment early on, creating a high efficient, healthy places, it pays off quite well. So I can also give more details on that and send them over to you, Carrie, so that you can share them. But it's something that is happening.
Okay, I want to give a thank you to all of our amazing panelists. We're all clapping right now in our respective offices or homes or whatever, wherever we're watching this. I want to thank you to the people who attended our today's panel discussion and for the amazing engagement that we got today. we want to ask you to please join us for our next webinar, which will feature Jen Senek and Getty Manelis. Jen's from Blaustein, Getty is from SEBS, and that's, Rutgers lingo, right? Some folks from Groundwork Elizabeth and the City of Elizabeth, as we talk about smart kids, cool seniors. And really, that's a project that combats climate change, and it looks at improving access. It deals with air pollution and both indoors and outdoors. And it's talking about exactly what when Memo talked about how many heat days we're going to have. It's a project that looks to the future to address how do we keep cool. So that's coming up. That's going to be March 10th at 11 o'clock. It's virtual, so hopefully you'll join us. But Rob, I'm going to give you the last word.
Thanks everyone for joining us, and definitely, an issue like this, which involves so many system changes, is a challenge. And thank you for clarifying some of the issues today and some of the way forward as we tackle this enormous challenge, which is so important to our health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for attending.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.